Majority of the time we hear people talk about curriculums, but do we really understand what a curriculum is all about? Welcome to Elimu Cafe, and in this first episode, we're just going to look at CBC, try to toanisha, and understand the basics that we need to know as parents and as educators. But when you talk about CBC, first of all, we need to know what does it mean. But before we go there, can we talk about what a curriculum is? Majority of the time we hear people talk about curriculums, but do we really understand what a curriculum is all about? Let me take this first few minutes to talk about what a curriculum is. Now, a curriculum has to be thought about as a roadmap. Think about it as though you're going for a jog and you're competing in a marathon. And in a marathon, there's a start, there's a finish, there's a water point, there's a direction to take you to this direction, to this place, to this place. So that's what a curriculum is. A curriculum is actually a roadmap to your child's teaching and learning experience throughout the time they're in school. So that's what a curriculum is. And curriculums are so many. I don't want you to think as though CBC is the only one. There are so many other curriculums. There are people in Kenya who are going through the IGCSE system, which we're going to talk about in another episode. But for this one, we're going to look at CBC. CBC is not old. It's a few years in, started in 2017. So actually, as we speak, there are students who we have not gone through the full round of CBC yet. And so when we look at CBC, which stands for a competency-based curriculum, the biggest word is going to be competency. So competency really is what separates CBC as we know it from 844. I know most of you who are watching here, if you're a parent, a millennial, you've probably gone through 844. And we used to call it 844 because it illustrated the number of years we were in school. 8 years in primary, 4 years in secondary, and 4 years in university. Take note that they never used to mention that kindergarten, early childhood part as well. But in CBC now, the emphasis has grown and it has expounded into early childhood. And that's what we're going to talk about. But what separates competency-based curriculum from the previous systems is what we want us to discuss today. A competency-based curriculum focuses on the skill. It does not focus on the knowledge. The knowledge becomes just the tip of the iceberg of this particular curriculum, whereby when we acquire the knowledge, the question is, are we able to implement that knowledge to become something that we can use on a day-to-day? Now, when I was watching videos and looking into research, I came across a video by the CBC app, which I shall link down below. How do you know that a nurse is competent? It's by ability, maybe, for example, to draw blood, how they take care of their wound, how they take care of your wound. So that's what CBC is all about, looking into that skill. What skill has a child developed to enable them to move from one step to another? Now, if you compare that with the 844, the 844 curriculum focused on the knowledge. And the knowledge was, am I able to remember what 8 plus 4 is? Now, if you remember, most of you who were in 844, we used to learn geography. I think most of you who went through 844 did geography. And there was physical features of Kenya. And I can guarantee and bet with at least most of you who will watch this video that you do not know where the Yatta Plateau is. And the Yatta Plateau was something that was always mentioned. I remember our teacher used to say, Yatta Plateau, what is a plateau, what is a plateau? But I never knew what a plateau is. I do not know. I saw it when I was in my first time in my 20s. And when I saw it, I didn't know what it was. I just saw it in passing. So that was the problem with the 844 system. It was about cramming. It was about memorization. And memorization and cramming is actually at the lowest order of learning and knowledge. So what competency-based curriculum does for us is it gives us a chance to apply whatever knowledge we have learned into creating practical solutions, and hence why the competency name has been put there. Now, if you look at the traditional ways of teaching, what we know as 844, it was very teacher-centered. What does that mean? Teacher ndiye alikuwa anasema. When the teacher says 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 1 is 2. Everything was centered towards what the teacher had prepared. and what the teacher is going to bring to the table. And a lot of the work was very oriented towards the teacher. You will sit in a classroom. As you can see me right now, my students will probably be sitting at the front, and all they will be doing is receiving knowledge. They were actually called passive receivers of knowledge. But now with the CBC, the child has become very centralized in how teaching and learning is taking place. How does that work? Children now are being given a chance to explore their different intelligences. They're being allowed to create or curate their own experiences. They're being allowed to move at their own pace. And that is something that in the past was not there. But the key element that is different from 844 and CBC is assessment. Now, assessment in the 844 curriculum was only what we call summative, once and for all. Wale mulifanya 8 KCP, unajua, even if ulikuwa umeanguka ukavunjika mkono on the day of the exam, it did not matter. That exam was the determinant of your future. 844 had the KCP, had the KCSE, and of course now the other assessments that you did when you were in college, if you went to pass the tertiary system. But in CBC now, we can see that the assessments have now been broken down into what we call formative assessments. Formative assessments are those assessments that take time and they happen in little bits and pieces. So for example, if your child is at 5 years old, they could get an assessment. It could be a project, it could be a portfolio, it could be something to record and sing, and all those things culminate into something we call a clear view of this child's growth and learning in school. But in the past, our 844 system only allowed us with a one solution, which was you do an exam at the end of 8 years, you do another exam at the end of 4 years. But now we have very many different approaches to assessing learners, and it gives them a chance to be able to move from one point to another, having recognized different abilities about themselves, from their intelligence to their talent, to their skills, to their capabilities. And so when you're talking about an all-rounded child, I am sure that the CBC curriculum is doing a much, much better job than the 844 one. All right, so we've looked at CBC and we've talked about what it's about, what the competence is. So our next segment is going to now break apart CBC as the structure. What is the structure of CBC and what are the competencies that CBC envisions to have for these learners? CBC, as in summary, is really just about competencies. It's about giving children an opportunity to move away from just acquiring knowledge, but using that knowledge to apply it in real life situations. And if we give our children that chance to be able to apply what they've learned in class, not just on pen and paper, right? But now they can be able to use it to grow trees, they can be able to use it to apply it in engineering, they can apply it in whatever capacity they are able to. Then that makes CBC, in my opinion, superior and definitely a much better approach to teaching and learning, especially in the 21st century. So in our next video, we're going to now open up and look at CBC from the structure to the competencies, to the goals and the vision that this CBC curriculum had in store for the learners. So see you next time, and thank you.